the podcast. 119. I think that's where we're at. 119. Boxing's biggest names, boxing's biggest stories, boxing's biggest fights, greatest memories and moments. We cover it all, and we do it with boxing author, writer, CompuBox counter, historian extraordinaire, Friendly's West Virginia's own Lee Groves. How you doing, Lee?
Doing well, Smitty. How about yourself?
Good. Busy stuff to talk about. Somebody's unbeaten, or not unbeaten, but undisputed championship is on the line this Saturday at T-Mobile Arena. That is the redhead, Canelo Alvarez. He'll be taking on Jaime Munguia. I think Munguia's unbeaten, isn't he?
It's 43-0.
That's right. So he's unbeaten. We'll dissect and break it down with our regulars. Tom Yankello from the world-class boxing gym. And then a gentleman, twice a world champion at $140. Regis Prograis will be on with us. Regis also has a new book out, Lee, I saw. Pretty cool. So we'll get a chance to talk to him about that. And why don't we clear the way for some of that by clearing the way with some reviews and previews of what was a fairly busy boxing weekend.
It was. Last Saturday, DAZN aired a 5-fight card emanating from Fresno, California, the adopted hometown of main event fighter Jose Carlos Ramirez. The card began with Raul Curiel scoring a first-round knockout over Jorge Marron Jr. to lift his record to 15-0 with 13 knockouts, while the next fight saw Gabriela Alaniz avenge her majority decision defeat to Marlen Esparza last July with a split decision victory that won her the WBA, WBC, and WBO flyweight titles, as well as the Ring Magazine Championship.
Now, you had that fight right or wrong, but then you had it right, because you actually called me right before the fight and said, or the day of the fight, and said you were switching your pick.
I was switching my pick. Last week, I thought Esparza would win because of her versatility, but then she missed weight by 2 pounds, and then she didn't seem that into the fact that she had to fight Alaniz again. And of course, Alaniz won the fight because she was more aggressive, and with the fight being in California, she got more credit for what she did well, instead of in Texas last July, Marlen Esparza's home state, where she was seen a big decision winner. And this time the scores were divergent again, but at the end
of the day, for those of you who think Lee had it wrong, he didn't. He had it right, before the fight.
Yeah, and next up, Oscar Duarte became the first man to stop Joseph Diaz Jr. with a TKO in round 9, while Vergil Ortiz blasted out Thomas Dulorme in 1 round. And then in the main event, Jose Carlos Ramirez survived several early storms to win a wide unanimous decision against Rances Barthelemy. So it was a very eventful card. And then we move on to the previews, and specifically the undercard of this Saturday's marquee pay-per-view show at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. That undercard will consist of 3 fights. First, secondary WBA welterweight champion Imanta Stanionis, who was thrice scheduled to face Vergil Ortiz, but none of the fights came through. He will defend his belt against 2-time Venezuelan Olympian Gabriel Maestre. Now, Stanionis outpointed Maestre in an amateur bout about 10 years ago, and I think he'll do so again because he may have the very best jab in boxing in terms of its accuracy and in terms of its impact. It is a hard thumping jab. Next up, Brandon Figueroa will defend his secondary WBC featherweight title against former WBO super bantamweight champion Jesse Magdaleno. I believe Figueroa's higher work rate and huge advantages in height and reach will earn him the victory. The co-feature will pit WBC secondary welterweight titleist Mario Barrios against Argentina's Fabian Maidana, the younger brother of Marcos Maidana. I think Barrios' experience and his long-range game will allow him to pick apart Maidana and win on points. And then finally, on May 6th, this coming Tuesday, a huge card featuring 4 world title fights will be staged in Japan. Nice. Seigyo Yuri Akui will defend the WBA flyweight title for the first time against Taku Kuwahara. I predict Akui, the champion, to prevail. Jason Maloney will risk his WBO bantamweight title against Southpaw Yoshiki Takai, who was an accomplished kickboxing champion before turning to boxing. I like Maloney on points, but Takai's southpaw stance and his body punching present a big danger. Takuma Inoue, the younger brother of Naoya Inoue, will defend his WBA bantamweight title against Sho Ishida. I'm picking Inoue to win that one. And in the main event, Naoya Inoue, the best fighter in the world, not named Terence Crawford, will fight mandatory challenger and former two-division champion Louis Nery, who, by the way, is fighting in Japan for the first time since being given a lifetime ban by the Japanese Boxing Commission in 2018, which proves that, in boxing at least, nothing is forever. Anyway, this should be an exciting match, and I'm picking the monster to prevail by KO.
Want to mention Vergil. You talked about his early destruction of Dulorme, who I think is a shot fighter, but pretty ambitious Vergil. His next fight will be against Tim Tszyu, and pretty ambitious for Tim Tszyu coming off the head injury against Fundora. That's going to be, I know we got time, but that's going to be a hell of a fight.
It really is, and credit to both of them for taking the risk, especially Tszyu, by taking the fight off of that loss against Sebastian Fundora. That's a heck of a comeback fight, if you ask me. And then Vergil Ortiz, 21-0 with 21 knockouts. He showed that he has just spectacular one-punch power. It should be a magnificent matchup.
Agree with that. We're going to take a little break and come back. Tommy Yankello from the World Class Boxing Gym joins us to break down Canelo and Munguia Saturday night from T-Mobile Arena for all those straps that Canelo has these days. We'll do that after you hear this. We'll be back.
I got two options. Option one, I can accept defeat. Option two, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
Back in this corner, the podcast, 119, boxing's biggest names, biggest stories, biggest fights, memories and moments. And we love breaking down these fights. And Regis Prograis, the former two-time Buck 40 champion, will be with us. But right now we're joined by, as always, from the World Class Boxing Gym, Tommy Yankello. How you doing, Tommy?
Good. How are you guys?
Pretty good. I know you've been busy with a tournament. I've been following some of the stuff on your various social media platforms. Tell us, I know you're just coming off a successful amateur tournament, right?
Yes, it was the Pennsylvania State Golden Glove Championship, which took place in Philadelphia Saturday night. And I had Danny Bodish. He won the 125-pound featherweight division state championship. So that's his says. He's a two-time state champion. So now he will fight in Detroit, May 13th through the 18th for the National Golden Gloves, which is always
Tommy, I'm such a believer in the amateur program. It's one of the I never had any amateur fights, and heaven knows it affected me when I tried to fight professionally. And I've seen the decline in amateur boxing in this country. So when you mention that you're doing that, it makes me feel good. Overall, I know it's a tough question, but where are we in the United States of America with amateur boxing?
Well, unfortunately, I think it has declined. I mean, and I feel like that's across the board, actually, with American boxing. I just think that the best athletes are the best. It seems like they all go. Like I said, football's king in this country. Well, along with baseball and NBA basketball, and I just think the majority of kids, that's what they try to become as far as athletes go. Those are the three sports, and I think boxing, falls far behind that. So
plus you got
I mean,
MMA. Plus you got MMA now in there, and a lot of the kids that like the I hate the word combat, but the ones that like combat sports, they're now, I think MMA is like it probably even more kids going into MMA than boxing. Am I right?
Sure, absolutely. It's especially on a broad spectrum. You have definitely a lot of. I mean, those gyms, the MMA schools around this area are way more. There's a lot more kids in those gyms than there is in boxing gyms, for sure.
Well, fortunately, amateur boxing has somebody in there like you, and the youngsters learn so much. Of course, Tommy, also a great trainer of anybody, and anybody out there looking for a trainer, I highly recommend you get in touch with Tommy, especially if you've got issues with your fundamentals or things fall apart, like that happened to Devin Haney last week, in my opinion, when he was beaten by Ryan Garcia. You were on last week. We all had Devin winning the fight. You and I had some great discussions after the fight, but tell the folks what you saw, what went wrong for Haney, what went right for Ryan Garcia.
Well, I think the fight had a lot more to do with Haney at the scale than it did Ryan Garcia. I mean, I can see a guy that's overtrained or weight drained, and Devin Haney was absolutely weight drained. And I know exactly what happened because I've had experience with this many times. Like, you had a kid like Devin who was struggling to make 135 pounds for the last few years. And he had been making that weight class since he was about 16 years old. So he goes up to 140. And what happens with these guys is they think that going to 140 is like going to 190. So he went up the last weight class. He went up 5 pounds. Instead of just making it natural and saying, okay, now I get 5 extra pounds to do exactly what I've been doing at making a 35. Now I got 5 more pounds, so I feel good, because you didn't feel good at 135. But what do you do? What do you see with him? I've seen pictures of him. He was 189 pounds. He was lifting weights, putting on muscle, like I said, he thinks 5 pounds is 50 pounds. So when he fought Regis, he got away with it. They said he blew up in that fight. He was 165 pounds the next day in that fight. So he gets away with Regis. So what does he do? He goes back and does even more weights and gains even more weight. And it caught up to him. It caught up to him in a big way. And I could see that before he ever got hit with the shot early in the round. As soon as he walked across the ring, I could see that his legs, he looked like he was in sand. They were spread apart. Looked like, and a lot of times when a guy's legs go bad, or a guy is having problems with weight, they will get wider in their stance than they usually do. That's a sign, because they're trying to sometimes find stability, because they don't find stability in their normal stance. So their legs naturally get wider. You'll see that in a lot of guys when they get older. Their stance get wider. It happened to Roy Jones, happened to all these guys so that was one thing that I seen. And I heard him talking before how long and hard the training camp was. And I said to myself, yeah, long and hard. And you could see at the weigh-in, they showed pictures, because they didn't show the live weigh-in. But when you seen pictures of him, I mean, he just looked gaunt. Like he was just totally shrunk in, really bad. So what you had with Ryan is you had somebody that knew that he wasn't going to do that to himself. And he knew that Devin was the champion, and he knew Devin was going to make that weight. So he made that silly bet. Who knows if we'll ever honor it. And then he's 3.5 pounds. So he knew he could come in 100%. He knew Devin wasn't going to be 100%, because he knew what Devin was doing doing as well. So I've had this happen many times. These guys, like I said, they'll go up in 5 pound weight class, and then they cause themselves more harm because they put on even more weight, and they think that Devin has this insecurity that he can't punch. So he goes and he thinks the weights are going to give him more punching power. Well, his feet were so much in sand, and when he's fighting Ryan's turning his back, and he's hitting him on the side of his back, and he's a total arm punch like he's in cement. He couldn't break an egg in that fight. Then as soon as he got hit, he was out, because that's the thing. The key, one of the biggest keys to being able to take a punch, is hydration. When you're not hydrated properly, and you only have that 1 day window, and you're totally dehydrated like that, you are not getting that hydration back to the cellular walls and everything in your whole brain and everything. So it's like an egg shaking in water when you're hydrated. When you take that little bit of water out, now that egg is break. That's why heavyweights don't die, but the lighter guys, they're racking that brain up against a dry skull, and it causes a brain bleed.
Yeah.
So he's lucky he didn't get injured even worse than that fight.
But let me ask you this quickly, and we'll move on to Canelo and Munguia. In a rematch, I mean, it just seems to me it would be hard for me to pick Haney in the rematch just because I wonder if the mental damage, psychological damage, what do you think?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's some psychological damage and even physical damage, because when you take a beating like that and your body's not right, that takes more out of you than when you're getting beat up with a healthy body. When you have an unhealthy body, you're getting hit. So, I mean, this is the thing too. Like at that weight class, I mean, we know Ryan can't make 140, so it would have to be at a catch weight. And I think Devin, like I said, did what he did there. And he had the same problem at 35. So what he did is he blew himself up even more. So it's like the definition of insanity. When you do the same thing, you think you're going to get a different result. So he's no longer 140. He's no longer 140 pounds. He damaged himself to that. It's like when Roy Jones went up, he told me, he says, the worst thing I ever did is when I fought heavyweight, when I fought John Reeves, I went to the weight. He says, because when I put that weight on like that muscle weight, and I had to come, and I tried to come back down to 175, and I had to lose muscle. Losing muscle makes you weak. Crazy.
Yeah, we
weak.
saw what happened with him against Carver. By the way,
never the same fighter. Never the same fighter after.
Devin, if maybe your dad's hired every trainer in the United States of America and probably parts of Mexico. Maybe Bill, you should call Tommy, and maybe Tommy could perhaps teach him at least how to fight a little bit on the inside, and teach him when you're facing a guy with a deadly left hook and you're on the inside, you don't put your head on the left shoulder where the guy only has to take a step back and throw. Anyway, I'm venting. Let's move.
To touch into that 1 second though, that was like what I was saying, when he rolls with his shoulder, he's got that little space, and he lays his head to the right, which is the guy's left, and he's got that gap for the right hand. But you're also, when you're laying too much like that, you're open for the hook. And that's why I said if Garcia feinted the right hand through the hook. But see, the thing about it is, it was way amplified, even worse. That flaw that I pointed out was way worse, because when you're not the same, everything falls apart. If you have a flaw, it amplifies everything you do. So he's really laying his head under the right, and he was stuck. Couldn't move his feet, couldn't move his head. I mean, believe me, he was not the same fighter that fought Regis Prograis or any, for that matter.
Well, we know you got to get out of here. So Lee, take us into this breakdown.
What must Munguia do best in order to give himself the best chance of dethrowing Canelo? And what are the things that he needs to avoid?
Well, that's a good question. I watched a little bit. I haven't watched enough of Munguia, but I mean that I would not as much as I would like to. But I mean, I think he's got to use. He's got a 4-inch height reach. I mean, a height advantage, and then he's got about a 2-inch reach advantage. So almost 6 inches within the height and reach. And I think he's got to use it. I mean, he's got to use a good jab, but he's got to say. But those are things that have to be done in the gym. You know what I mean? Like when I watched him fight, he doesn't know how to use his reach well, and he squares up a lot. He takes a lot of shots up the middle. I think it's going to be a real tough fight for him, and I think that I think he's got to really use a great jab, and I think he's got to utilize using that distance somewhat, because I don't think if Canelo gets to the inside of him, or Canelo gets in that pocket with him, he's not. I think he's got too many defensive openings. Flaws, where he's open to be hit more than Canelo is. I think Canelo has better defense, and I think Canelo has sharper, shorter punches. So anytime they're within that reach and that distance, Canelo is the shorter, sharper, puncher, and he's got the better combinations, and he's really got them short, sweet shots. And that kid's going to have to have that distance where he can land them big shots that he throws, where he throws the haymakers, or he throws seems like he tries to throw some looping shots. So you can't throw looping shots when someone's on the inside of that. And Canelo, I just feel that he's going to have a hard time doing that with Canelo. So
very, very much so. And turning it the other way, what must Canelo do best to give him a chance, the best chance of beating Munguia? And what are the things that he needs to stay away from?
Well, I think Canelo, like I said, gets in that pocket and gets on the inside of his big looping shots, and I think that he tries to find his home right there, and really be on the inside with this kid. Inside, mid-range. I don't think he wants to be on the outside of a looping long shot. I think he gets on the inside. He, uses different defenses, and Canelo's pretty good defensively. He's slick and he moves his head pretty good. And I think that's one thing, though. With this being said, I think in the last few fights that he hasn't been as great defensively. So he definitely will need it in this fight, because this kid can crack. He's got some good. He's got a good knockout percentage, and he seems to be a very strong guy that hits with some good whip in his punches. You could see he's got some good whip, definitely on if you get caught on the end of the shot, he's got some good power. So that's something he's going to have to be aware of.
And another thing that Canelo does well is that he bangs the arms, and he breaks blood vessels in guys' arms, and over time that it hinders their ability to maintain a high work rate, which is one of Munguia's greatest strengths.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And like I said, I think if he prepared properly, and he knows that he has to be, like I said, in that range where he's not on the end of this kid's looping punches, and is able to work this kid's body and all over. Like I said, like you just said, everything's a target.
Well, I tell you what, it sounds like you're leaning towards Canelo. So what the fans want to know, does he win by decision, the redhead, or does he stop Munguia?
Okay. I have like two schools of thoughts on this thing. Is that, like an undefeated fighter is, a dangerous guy, because he doesn't know how. He's never lost. He's never tasted it. So it makes him somewhat of a better fighter, or a tougher fighter, being able to take more punishment, because they take more punishment because they really don't know what it is to be defeated, and their body has no muscle memory of that, to being stopped. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, my second train of thought is that, that'll keep him up for a while. But I just think that he's defensively lacking. And I think Canelo's short, sharp shots and just better overall skills and shorter, sharper punches, he's going to get on the inside, and his defense is better to not get hit. When your defense is good, your offense is good, and you hit guys from angles they don't see. So I think this kid's going to take some. And I think the other thing is, like I said, he doesn't know how to use his reach, and he's going to force Canelo to inflict more punishment on him, because he's dangerous. So Canelo's going to have to get on the inside, and when he gets on the inside, it's going to make it a more action-packed fight, and a lot more lethal punches being thrown, and shots that his kid can get hit on the inside with angles he doesn't see, because Canelo does have to, be on the inside and fight this. This kid's going to put the pressure. I think like I said, I don't think he knows how to use his reach. So he's going to force Canelo to turn it up, to be in order to not be knocked out himself or get hurt himself. So I think it's like a fight like I can remember when, people talked about what Riddick Bowe, when he fought Galata, and he beat Riddick Bowe, was just didn't look good, and Galata was beating him up even in the fight he won. And when he fought Lennox Lewis, they thought it was going to be a good fight. But I knew Lennox Lewis was really physically strong, and Galata was strong and was going to force Lennox to get rid of him early. So he ended up stopping him because Galata forced him. So I think this thing, I don't think he'll stop this kid early. I think this kid will survive for a while, because, like I said, undefeated, and he'll put up a hell of a fight, and he's dangerous. So Canelo, at the same time as putting on pressure, he's got to be defensively responsible. So, he's going to be defensive at times on the inside too, where he might not land the shots enough to accumulate the knockout. But I think he will stop Munguia. I think he's going to stop him somewhere in the later rounds, anywhere from like 9 to 11. I think he stops him in that period of frame after a great, exciting fight, though.
I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a good one. We're going to let you get out of here, because I know you're super duper busy, and we're going to keep you busy. We've got Usyk and Fury coming up in a few weeks, and the one I'm really excited about is Bivol and Beterbiev, June the 1st. We're hoping that Tommy has the time to do a video like he did on the last. That was a great video. Fans really enjoyed that, where you get one of your students and break down, because I know those are two, for me. All I'll say is I think Usyk and Fury's pick 'em, and I think Beterbiev and Bivol is pick 'em. So we'll find out how you pick 'em when we have you back on. Tommy Yankello from the World Class Boxing Gym. Thank you, man. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, guys.
I got two options. Option one, I can accept defeat. Option 2, I could get up, I could get tougher, I could get faster, I could get stronger, and then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
Back in this corner of the podcast, 119, and joined by one of our favorite guest and regular contributors to the program. 2 times he was world champion at $140. He's hoping to win another world championship, but I'm really excited about this here. If you folks can see that, of course, we'll put the cover up. Stories and lessons from Regis Prograis, as told to Ross Williams. Tell us about this new book that's available on Amazon and what inspired it and what can we get out of it?
Well, I'm excited. First, I'm excited about it because, it's something I've been working on since I think like around 2018. I miss a lot of things to say about the book, but I think the first thing we can say, well, Ross is actually one of my childhood friends. We all grew up together in New Orleans. He was a basketball player. His dad was my basketball coach. So we all played and we kind of connected early. He wrote 2 books. And for me, I'm a big reader. If everybody don't know, I'm a big reader. I read a lot of books. I'm right now I'm currently reading this book, Muhammad Ali book. But I read a bunch of books, and then he gave me 2 books, and like his books was just real good. Like the books he wrote, just the storyline, everything was real good. I said, man, you really have a gift for this, because I read a lot and I can compare. It's not like I just read his books and that was it. I read a lot of books and I compare. So I was like, he said, you know what? Let's do a book for you. And I was like, man, that's a good idea. So we've been working on it since 2018. And it's finally finished. It's on Amazon right now. It was #1 bestseller on Amazon. So I'm just like super excited about this. It's just finally done. I think that in this book, it's a lot of things that people really don't know about me. I think a lot of people probably, they talk to me and think they know about things, but just my upbringing and stuff that people probably don't know is, it's all in those lessons, and then the stories and like I said, the lessons, like just things I learned, a lot of things that I learned over the years that I feel like I can give a lot of up and coming people some advice.
Well, I know if it's you, and one of the things I like about you so much, you're so authentic. I know it's going to be for real. You're going to keep it real, and you'll be honest, knowing you the way I do. I think when we worked together a few times, you were telling me about the book, and somebody that knows a lot about books because he's written a bunch. I'll toss it to Lee Groves.
Well, I wrote 2, but Regis is catching up. What are your thoughts about the big fight last weekend with Ryan Garcia upsetting Devin Haney? I bet you wanted to be in the ring with that version of Haney, right?
Oh man, I wish, things happen, that'll be in my second book basically. But yeah, I mean, that was, it upset the whole world. That was something that, Ryan he upset the whole world. He, just like we were saying, I don't know, at first we were saying, I don't know if he was trolling or he was serious, but it looked like he trolled the whole world. And he really upset. And I saw that he bet $2 million on himself and he won like $12 million. And yeah, he upset the whole world. He really trolled all of us. He trolled the whole world. So I think it's a good thing because it really shook up boxing. It really did. I mean, him just coming over on weight, he don't even care about the belts. It really put a dent in boxing, and it kind of shook up boxing with that.
He doesn't care about the belts. I mentioned you've already had 2 of them. I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm being serious. And it's not, I openly don't care. He's a young guy, so I give him, a lot of time to mature. I don't care for what he does, but I don't know if he'll ever win a world title, because if he's not going to fight at $140. He's too big. So he'll be at $147. I don't think he can beat any of those guys.
Yeah, I can't say I agree with that, because I don't think he can beat, right now, the person who was at 40, you had
Crawford. Got Jaron Ennis has the IBF belt. Crawford has 3 of the belts at 147, but he's moving up in weight to 154. And if he wins, he might vacate those 3 belts.
There's an opportunity, a vacant belt.
That's an opportunity for him right there. I think kind of Crawford and Spence had the strongholds on the belt, and I don't think Ryan could beat either one of those guys. But if you're talking about, if they vacant, Ryan, it depends who they put in front of him. He might
Right.
can win something if they're vacant. You never know. Adrian Broner might get one of those belts if he's at 47.
My
Blair
word.
Cobb, I don't think, obviously, Jerron Ennis, he's in a different league by himself. I think he's up there with the Crawford and the Spences. But if they're moving up, then I think Ennis will be, kind of one of the only ones at 147 really worth mentioning. But
Yeah, that's
I
true.
think
Yeah, that's a good point. Lee?
Well, let's talk about the big fight on Saturday. I'm sure you can relate to Munguia's position in this way. You had to wait years for your chance to win a second world title against Jose Zepeda, just like Munguia has had to wait years for his chance to win a second world title against Alvarez. How difficult was it for you to control your emotions and your pent-up energy when you were fighting Zepeda for the championship?
Oh man, it was just a long time coming because it was 3 years to get me back the title again. So I just felt like that night I couldn't be beaten by nobody, because it took so long, and I was training, I told myself, after I lost my title the first time, I'm like, man, I'm going to be a world champion again. I had opportunity to go to 147. I was like, no, I want to be a champion again at 140, and I kind of stuck with my guns, and just, that night I just felt like, man, that whole training camp that night, I just felt like nobody was gonna beat me, nobody's gonna take away, what I wanted. So I feel, I know how he feels, and it's gonna be hard to stop him. I mean, he's going up against Canelo, but that's a very, very intriguing fight because, Canelo is Canelo, one of the greatest fights ever. But, with Munguia waiting so long, he has a lot mentally, he has a lot built up that, he just wants that belt.
If you're Jaime Munguia, how do you beat Canelo?
Oh man, it's hard. I mean, I think I think Munguia will have to kind of use his more youth because Canelo definitely has the resume. He has the experience, so you have to use your youth against him. I think like just have a high work rate.
Yeah.
And just don't get caught with nothing. To really just be on sharp, don't get caught with nothing big because, like I said, I think Canelo. Some people say about that he's fading. Maybe he could, maybe he's not, but I don't know, man. It's still Canelo. It's gonna be a tough fight, but he's definitely beatable.
And if you're Canelo Alvarez, how do you beat Munguia?
Same thing, opposite. Use the experience. You don't have the youth on your side, but use the experience. Use the power. Use the experience. And you're Canelo Alvarez, so you've been there with the best of the best over for a long time. So go out there and use that experience to win.
And who do you think's going to win, and how?
I still say with Canelo. I think Canelo decision. I mean, I can't. It's just for me. I can't go against Canelo. When people say Canelo, I just it's hard to go against them until somebody shows me otherwise. I mean, I think they share the same opponent. They have John Ryder. I was at the Ryder fight in Mexico, and Canelo dropped him a few times, but he didn't. He didn't finish him. But Munguia finished him, if I understand right. So,
Right.
yeah, man. But it's still hard for me to go against Canelo.
Yeah. You've had some time now to reflect. I'm really excited again about the new book, Stories and Lessons from Regis Prograis, and I would imagine because I haven't read it yet, that there'll be a lot about you in New Orleans and Regis. I would imagine that because you're so proud of your heritage and what you represent and what it's represented to you, and in many ways, that city has molded you.
Yeah, of course. We have a lot of upbringing stuff but the thing is now, like, so I've been, the storm was 2005. So we talking about, man, that was almost 20 years ago. So, it was a long time. So, we had a lot of that in the early chapters, but then, we switched after the storm because then we started going to, because it's a lot that happened in my life from that. We had my early childhood upbringing. We had in New Orleans. Then we had Katrina. Then we had, I moved to Houston. I moved to Mississippi. I moved to Slidell. Then I moved back to Houston. And then we have the boxing journey also. So I think in this book, and I know it's a lot in this book that, people probably don't understand about like my journey and really like how hard it was. My journey was a real hard one. I never kind of had an easy path. I always had a hard path growing up. And that's kind of, what's in this book. And that's why I want like, a lot of younger fighters to read. It's not really young people because it's really not it's really for older crowds, and tell you is because my son, he brought it to school the other day. He read a little bit. He was like, he was reading. I'm like, you're not supposed to bring this to your school. This book is not for, smaller kids. This book is not for smaller kids. Maybe like 12th graders, but more, more the older crowd. That's what this book is for.
So what he's saying, Lee, is that you got old dudes like you and I will understand it perfectly.
Yes,
one of the things I say,
yeah.
one of the things I think about you with New Orleans, no matter where you end up with your family living, somebody the other day on one of Instagram or something said, Smitty's a Vegas guy. And I said, nah. I live in Vegas, but I'll always be Miami. That's where my roots are. That's where I come from.
Right.
Listen, we're going to work you a lot because we've got Usyk and Fury coming up in a couple of weeks. We'll get you on for that one. And then the one I am so excited about, because I think it's a flip of the coin, is better Biev and Bivol.
That's a good one.
June the 1st. And then I head off to Canastota to host the International Boxing Hall of Fame. He is Regis Prograis, Stories and Lessons from Regis Prograis, available on Amazon, right?
On Amazon, #1 bestseller on Amazon. That's it right there. That's
awesome.
it.
Congratulations.
Fantastic. Although he's still fighting, he's already preparing for LAB. I call it life after boxing when his career is said and done. Thank you, Regis.
All right, man. Thank y'all.
Saturday night, T-Mobile Arena, Canelo Alvarez. All the belts on the line against unbeaten, the youngster, Jaime Munguia. Lee, who do you like?
Well, like most people, I would have rather seen Canelo face David Benavidez or David Morrell. But since both of them will be fighting at 175 pounds in June, I think Munguia is the next best choice. So I really like this fight. More than most fights, this one I think is going to be decided by which man imposes his preferred work rate and his preferred distance on the other guy. Munguia wants a faster pace. He wants it at longer range. And Alvarez would like a modestly paced battle in the trenches where his accuracy, experience, and body punching is going to hold sway. Munguia can't afford to be in study hall mode for very long. And it would behoove him to push the pace early, hope to hurt Canelo early, force him to play catch up, and get desperate. If he doesn't, then Alvarez's experience and his brutal efficiency will rule the day. And here's a vital stat. In Munguia's 15 CompuBox tracked fights, he averaged 64 punches per round. That's pretty good. I think that pace would help him. But in his 3 fights at 168, he averaged 57. I don't think that will be enough, not quite enough. Unless Munguia elevates his game, specifically his work rate, the game will belong to Canelo Alvarez. This should be an excellent action fight, and I think Munguia will get him his share of punches, but I think Canelo will emerge with a unanimous decision victory.
Okay.
How about you?
Yeah, I think, that the main things about that be fun to try to, we saw an upset last week. So is this going to be another one? But I think that it's the things I don't know about Munguia. I don't know how he'll be under the biggest and brightest lights with all the pressure taking on a Mexican legend. Yep. Regis, I like what he said. I think he can try to fight through that and use youth. I also don't know about his beard. I don't think he has a beard, which maybe he should grow one before this fight. But I don't know what his ability to take a punch is, his ability to absorb power shots. And I'm telling you, Canelo punches like a mule, man. He hits with both hands. They're short and compact. And they're around the corners and especially up, the middle. and again with both hands. So I think the best thing for Munguia to do, and you nailed it, so to jump all over Canelo, even if it's sloppy, but just stay all over him. Try to steal, the first 4 or 5 rounds while Canelo tries to download that, the data to get his big shots off. And don't let Canelo get set. Munguia's no Floyd Mayweather or no Bud Crawford with his own feet, but if he can just move around and create some angles, I think that would be his best path. I think Canelo is on the other side, but not enough to where he won't stop Munguia between round 9 and 12. So your thing is, I think the conventional wisdom. I'll just say, because this guy's so aggressive, I think Canelo gets the stoppage.
Okay, cool.
So, but I think it'll be a hell of a fight. And boy, man, we got some good stuff. For me, Mr. Pessimistic, you Mr. Optimistic, things are leaning your way with a plethora of great pugilistic action ahead. We've got Usyk and Fury coming up, Beterbiev and Bivol, and there's other stuff. You mentioned the return of Crawford, and Inoue is fighting. You previewed that fight, and Lomachenko, right, and Kambosos. I mean, we got some really good stuff going on with the sweet science. And I think we'll take one last break and come back, and I got some stuff to say with Smitty Says. Back with that right after this.
I got 2 options. Option 1, I can accept defeat. Option 2, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
Back on In This Corner of the Podcast 119, and I says it is time for Smitty Says. So take us into this, Lee.
Earlier in the show, we mentioned about the big fight between Vergil Ortiz and Tim Tszyu. And speaking of of big fights that are happening in August, your man Terence Crawford is signed to fight Israil Madrimov, not only for Madrimov's WBA title at 154, but also for the WBO's secondary title at that weight. Now, when I spoke to you about this fight on the phone, you weren't exactly jazzed about this. Why is that?
Well, with Crawford's age and where he's at, he looks so good. He's looked so good at a $147, and I still think he can make that. I know he's getting bigger. You can see it. But, just going up in weight, unless it's the right kind of fight against the right kind of person. And, this guy, of course, Crawford's a lot better, but this guy's, naturally a bigger dude. And will Crawford be able to get up for this fight? I think he will because of who he is, but that's the only fear I have. But anytime I get to see Bud, I enjoy it because he's the best fighter on the planet. But I would prefer him staying at 147 or going up to fight a guy that will be, fighting this Saturday night, the redhead, Canelo.
Yeah, you really like that matchup with Canelo and Crawford. Why is that?
Because Crawford's a much better fighter, much better, and he can do it from both sides. We've gone over all this. His feet are so much better, and I think although Canelo's a bigger guy, bigger and stronger. Remember, Canelo started his career at what? About a $140, $147.
140.
Yeah,
but he's 15.
And he's height-wise, they're the same. Reach-wise, Bud's got 4 inches, knows how to use it. If he uses it and uses his legs, he beats Canelo. If he doesn't, he probably gets stopped. It's a great fight for both guys, given where they're at. It's one of those where both fighters, boy, we can clearly see paths to win by both guys. What a fascinating fight. I think Canelo would probably, if he wins this fight, would be the favorite. I'd love to see it. I would pick Crawford.
Yeah. And another thing that Crawford would have to deal with is the fact that he looked so spectacular in his last fight against Spence. He's going to be measured against Madrimov against that standard. And unless he reaches that standard, his standing might suffer against Madrimov.
I don't think I don't think that's a fair comparison for all the things we know about. Well, we feel about Errol Spence that we'll find out if and when he ever fights again.
Okay, well, moving on to the next subject, it appears that another one of your favorites, Ryan Garcia, is continuing his victory tour after the big win against Haney. And that victory tour included shadow boxing at Mar-a-Lago, visiting Deion Sanders at the University of Colorado, and rapping on stage. On the one hand, you can't blame him for celebrating a victory that shocked the entire boxing world, including all of us. But on the other hand, are you concerned about him burning the candle on both ends to a nub?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly well said. I think that's what he's doing. I always caution fighters to stay away from anything political. You know, I told Manny he shouldn't run for office. It's in, you know, we've seen what happens with other fighters like Alexis Arguello. For Ryan to get in bed with Trump has I could do several podcasts on that I won't. So, but I think the whole thing is just him kind of doing the same thing. It's like he craves attention. Well, he already got it. He proved all of us wrong I guess you could call it a fascinating performance. I won't call it spectacular, but he proved us all wrong. What he should focus on now is how do I win a world title at a $147? Because I don't think there's a path to do that. At least, well, there is a path, but I don't want to, because you explained it to me and I agree with you. But I think he should focus on his boxing, and if he wants to help people, wonderful, go around and help people. But you don't have to do it offering Rolexes to the 12 millionth person. It's just a bunch of crap that he continues to spew, but whatever, his story continues, I guess.
Yep. And then the final subject, earlier today, and we were taping on Monday, it was revealed that the event between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson is going to be a fight that's going to be on both of their records. It's going to be an official fight with two caveats. One, it's going to be 8 2-minute rounds, and they're going to be wearing 14-ounce gloves. And I forgot a third, that there's going to be no headgear. So
there's going to be VADA testing.
I wonder. It didn't mention anything about that. But what are your thoughts? I should
reach out to Margaret Goodman and ask her on that. Look, it's they're trying to do anything they can to pique the interest, which is already there. Mm-hmm. It probably will be the most watched boxing event of this year. I don't think anything will surpass it. Even brilliant fights like, Usyk and Fury and Beterbiev and Bivol and other, some of the fights that are, that we've been talking about. I don't like, what I feel about it. Again, if it's for some type of charity, we get the chance to see Mike in there for a little bit, and Jake is doing whatever he does. I wouldn't have an issue with it, but now they're making it worse to me. Mike Tyson's 157 years old. He should not be fighting, and anything is possible in Texas. They might, if you and I fight, maybe they'd actually come up with a real belt for that. I mean, anything. I don't. Well, let me ask you. You're a historian. Do you think it should be sanctioned as a real fight?
I don't think it should be sanctioned as a real fight. There's safety issues regarding his age, the weight difference, of course. And of course, you told me that Jake is starting to look as big as a house. So maybe there could be lesser of a weight difference. There's an age difference. There's an experience difference. There's just so many things, so many puzzle pieces that just don't fit.
Yeah.
If they want to have it as a charity-based event, an exhibition or whatever, fine.
Yeah.
But now it's a real fight, at least as far as the records is concerned. I just don't like it.
Yeah, I will agree with that. And we will close with that. Or is that it? Is that it for our Smitty Says?
Yeah, that's it, man. I got 3. That's all I got.
And that's a wrap for the show. We want to thank Tommy Yankello for joining us and Regis Prograis. Now, next week is what we would call up in the air. And what I mean by that is I have to go to New York to do a documentary that I'm sworn to secrecy on at this point. More on that later on when I'm at liberty to talk about it. But we may be back depending on what happens in the Canelo Alvarez-Jaime Munguia battle. So just all I can say is stay tuned. So long, everybody.